Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Viewers, after 6 long years and a strengthening transition to democracy, the country has a new army chief. And separately, Mr. Sharif's appointment of General Raheel Sharif appears to be a canny move. While the other 3 or 4 potential candidates were endlessly dissected in the media and appear to have various groups lobbying for one or the other candidate, General Sharif was seemingly no one's favorite or preferred candidate. A low-key general with impeccable military credentials. Perhaps the Prime Minister has gambled that his choice will more likely play out over the next 3 years as Team Sharif instead of Sharif versus Sharif. A new chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee, the more senior but less powerful military post, has also been announced. Both appointments tell a tale of their own. In selecting yet another CJCSC from the Army, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif appears to have yielded to the Army's argument that the CJCSC slot, because of its role in overseeing the country's military nuclear program, must remain with the more powerful and much larger Army, instead of rotating between the 3 services. Now we have our new Army chief. Let's see what is the challenges that this new Army chief will be facing in the form of terrorism, sectarianism, and let's see how much compatibility will we see in this new Army chief. Today, in today's discussion, Mr. Zaid Hamid will be joining me. Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Zaid Hamid. As you know, that today we have a new Army chief of Pakistan, Mr. General Raheel Sharif. Before we start our discussion, we have a report put together about our new Army chief. Let's have a look at that and then we will start our discussion.
Lieutenant General Raheel Sharif has been appointed as Pakistan's 15th Chief of Army Staff. General Sharif has been appointed as Army Chief for a 3-year term by President Mamnoon Hussain, who signed the appointment on the advice of Prime Minister Mian Muhammad Nawaz Sharif. Lieutenant General Sharif, who previously served as the Inspector General of Training and Evaluation in the military, would be promoted as 4-star general before taking the new office. He will assume the office on November 29, a change of command ceremony after the retirement of the outgoing Army Chief, General Ashfaq Parvez Kiani, on November 28. Kiani served as Army Chief for 6 years from 2007 to 2013, including a 3-year extension granted by then President Asif Ali Zardari. Meanwhile, General Rashid Mahmood has been appointed as Chairman Joint Chief of Staff Committee. He will take office after the power transfer ceremony of Army Chief. Under General Kiani, the military gained a new point of respect despite years of turmoil and conflict with the civilian government led by President Asif Ali Zardari. The generals choose to bide their time and allow a fully democratic transaction rather than taking control themselves. Challenges for a new Army Chief are the American military withdrawal from Afghanistan, as well as the continued and deeply unpopular CIA drone strike campaign within Pakistani territory have kept apprehensions high among Pakistani officials. Despite often strained relations, the Obama administration has continued to seek Pakistani military and intelligence cooperation on those issues, presenting a difficult balance act for the country's military leadership.
Yes, Mr. Zaid Hamid, as you can see that we have our new Army Chief in the form of General Raheel Sharif. So do you think that the selection of General Raheel Sharif by Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif is the right choice? How do you see it?
First, let me give you an example of explanation of the environment in which General Raheel Sharif has landed. For the last 13 years, Pakistan is fighting the longest war in its history, the bloodiest one. Over 100,000 Pakistanis have died already. Pakistan Army has given almost 35,000 casualties. There are 3 war doctrines that are deployed against Pakistan. The American AFPAC, which is waging a war from Afghanistan into Pakistan, which means supporting the drone strikes, sending in insurgent and terrorist groups, separatist movements. There's an urban 4th generation war in Pakistan from Peshawar to Karachi. Every city is on fire. the urban war going on in Karachi and all the major cities of Pakistan, and there's Indian Cold Star doctrine, which is threatening to invade Pakistan from the east. Very hostile, aggressive postures from India. Then there is the issue of Kashmir. Then there is the issue of water aggression, Pakistan's waters being blocked. And then there is threat of economic collapse because of this urban fourth generation war. Then there is very hostile media in Pakistan, which is actually an media access of the fourth generation war, attacking the Pakistan army, waging a war against the state itself. And then Pakistan has an extremely hostile judiciary, which is seen to be supporting the insurgents and the terrorists and humiliating and insulting the armed forces. It is in this environment that a new army chief has landed.
So it's not a piece of cake for him that's waiting.
In fact, this is the point. The new army chief is a thorough gentleman. He's a patriotic officer, comes from a family of very brave, honorable officers who have served the country with courage. The highest medals of honor of which this country can give to any soldier, at least two of them have gone into his family.
One is his uncle and one is his brother.
And even his own elder brother,
right,
who has received Nishan-e-Haidar, the highest military award given to any soldier for bravery and courage. His elder brother has it in the 1971 war against Indians. So as far as personal credentials are concerned, he is an honest, upright, clean officer, very decent, thorough gentleman, there's no doubt about it. But the fact of the matter is that even for Hercules to land into this battle zone, it would be a Herculean task. It would be a gigantic task. He is, the country that is being handed over to him now is on a precipice of disaster, almost on the verge of implosion because of absolute corrupt, incompetent, failed democracy, collapsed economy, multiple insurgencies, and hostile war doctrines that have been deployed against the country. So for General Rahil himself, personally, for the army, and for the country, this is a make and break time. The country which is handed over to General Rahil right now is on the verge of implosion from inside because of failed democracy. For the last 6 years, Pakistan is experimenting with democracy. The Zardari period, the 5 years, completely destroyed the country from within. And now the Nawaz Sharif's period, they've been here for the last 6 months almost, and every day is worse than the previous one. So in this environment, even the finest of the finest general, if you bring him in a situation which is so desperately hopeless, the task becomes almost next to impossible. So he will have to, for him also personally, as we say, for General Rahil, if I was at his place, I would be a very serious man.
So then there's another question that's rising, and everybody wants to know that why the senior most, the 3-star general Harun Aslam, was not selected for the post of army chief.
You see, you need to understand the psychology and mentality and paranoia of Nawaz Sharif, the Prime Minister. He's been the Prime Minister 3rd time now, the tenure that he's passing now. And twice he had the opportunity of appointing the army chiefs, and both times they completely misfired. He once appointed Pervez Musharraf, and Pervez Musharraf staged a coup against him, and Pervez Musharraf was from the special forces, he was a commando. And before that, General Asif Nawaz Malik, and there was another general which he appointed, in the relationship between army and Nawaz Sharif have always been historically very bad. And army has always been planning to overthrow his governments whenever they were in the past. In Musharraf time, they even overthrew him and sent him to jail, and then he had to live 10-year exile in Saudi Arabia. So these fears, he can never take them out of his soul and body. Everything that he does, it's the most unfortunate part in Pakistan, that the Prime Minister takes the army as an enemy force. Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif does not respect, does not trust Pakistan Army and its leadership. This is the most unfortunate part, the harsh reality which nobody wants to speak, but this is how it is. So for Nawaz Sharif, the only criteria was...
But this is the first time they're saying that this is the first time when General Kayani was the army chief that army and establishment, the political leadership, are on the same platform this time. So you think still Nawaz Sharif, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif doesn't have the respect for army?
General Kayani started his career as an army chief at the time of almost when the Zardari's People's Party government was also coming in place. And That was the time when Musharraf had just left power and the political government had come in, and army at that time had taken a very mature decision that they would stay out of politics. No matter what, let the politicians run the country, because already army had very heavy baggage upon them because of whatever adventures or misadventures of Musharraf. Army wanted to drag itself away from politics at that time.
They kept a low profile.
They wanted to keep a low profile in politics and in judiciary and media. But of course, they were fighting a war. So they focused themselves on war, fought the war brilliantly, there's no doubt about it. Under General Kiani, Pakistan Army fought very well. We destroyed the insurgent movements. Even now, the military operations that were conducted and done in Sawat and Peuchar and all the tribal areas are being taught as a textbook military syllabus in all the military schools of the world. Pakistan Army's military operations have been such a success against the terrorists, and that was all under General Kiani's tenure. But on the other hand, because of a very corrupt, incompetent and failed, dysfunctional, almost treacherous government of Zardari, the fact is that while the army took the decision of not interfering into politics, that allowed Zardari and all his political cahoots to destroy the country as if there is no tomorrow. And in fact, after the Osama bin Laden raid in Abbottabad, the Zardari government even wrote a memo, either wrote a secret treacherous memo asking the Americans to overthrow or assassinate the army's leadership. And the whole scandal memo scandal bursted into the national mainstream, and even Supreme Court took notice of it, and the whole government was in turmoil, and there was a chance that army would be dragged into removing the government after this treacherous, rebellious memo was exposed that president of the country and the ambassador of the United States was writing to the American government against the very army itself. So,
but then General Kiani's role in this Memogate scandal, how do you see that? How did he handle Memogate scandal?
See, now at that time there was intense pressure on the army to get involved, to remove the government, or to get very aggressive and resolve the matter, even judicially for that matter, because Supreme Court took notice of it. And Army Chief and the DGISI at that time actually submitted their reply in the Supreme Court, and later on the investigations were done and it was found out that the memo was a reality. So somebody was definitely a traitor in the Zardari government, and only thing was to prosecute them and to punish them. But at that moment, even at that moment, General Kiani decided to withdraw. He did not.
Was that the right decision from General Kiani?
I personally feel it was a mistake. It should have been pushed. It should have been pursued. If a crime has been committed, then whether that crime has been...
In what form General Kiani would have pursued this?
Through Supreme Court. I mean, through Supreme Court, Army could have...
Through legally?
Through legally, of course. But the point is that there was two concerns for the Army. Either to ignore the memo at that time and let the democracy continue, or to take notice of the memo, pursue it, and remove the Zardari government. So this was a very difficult decision at that time. And at that time, basically what Army did was they threw the ball in the judiciary's court, and judiciary should have pursued. Army did not pursue it, judiciary did not pursue it. As a result, the greatest treachery of Pakistan's history was left ignored. Till date, it is ignored. I mean, it's actually a major crime was committed against the state and nobody took notice of it. These kind of multiple events like this took place during General Kiani's tenure. And most of the time, the government was involved, or judiciary was involved, or media was involved. For example, media waged a ruthless war against the armed forces, against the state, but Army still did not take any notice of it. And because, again, freedom of media, democracy.
So there were these lackings from General Kiani. If we go through his duration of 6 years, the highlights of his 6 years were Memogate scandal, Salala checkpost attack, Abbottabad operation attack, Kerry Lugar bill. So what do you think? How did he manage Abbottabad operation? Because Pak Army did get kind of in a way under pressure because of the Abbottabad operation.
This is what we are saying, that General Kiani's tenure has been the most difficult, and now General Rahil's tenure is going to be even more difficult. And General Kiani was stuck between a hard place and a rock. Because as we said, the government itself was corrupt, incompetent, collaborating with the enemies, trying to destroy the state from within.
So what you're saying is that People's Party government was more corrupt, and Nawaz Sharif government is not as corrupt as People's Party? So General Rahil might get a better government in his duration?
See, as far as corruption is concerned, they're equally corrupt. There's no difference. As far as governance is concerned, bad governance is rampant in both. As as far as, see, Nawaz Sharif government is only 6 months old, but still their indecision, their confusion, their lack of ability to run the country is so palpable, so obvious that, as we said, every day is worse than the previous one. The point is that General Kiani spent time with Zardari, the worst possible president, worst possible government that Pakistan could ever had. And for him, it was an extremely difficult choice because army was demoralized, army was being attacked in media, attacked in judiciary, corruption, treason was taking place by the government, but still army tried to remain focused in fighting the war. As a result, we started to lose the war. While army was winning battles, we were losing the war as the country was imploding. So this was a very, very delicate balancing act for General Kiani. That's why there are lots of blemishes on his career as well. There are lots of criticism on his career as well for the very simple reason, why did he stay silent on blatant criminal activity of media and judiciary and the government? So, but since he had decided, he had taken a policy decision that no matter what, we will not interfere into politics. As a result, now when the country is being handed over to General Rahil, he is in very dangerous times. He is entering into the.
So then the question here comes is that will General Rahil Sharif follow the same path as General Kiani did? Will he stay in the same passive mode, or will he be in more active mode? We will talk on this after a short break. Viewers, stay with us. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back, viewers. Finally, Pakistan gets to see its 15th Chief of Army Staff in the name of General Rahil Sharif, which was selected by Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif when General Rashid Mahmood has been selected as the chairman of JCSC. Now, in all this process, the most senior general under the 3 stars, General Harun Aslam, has been completely ignored. So now the question here is that the selection of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif on General Rahil Sharif will be the right selection for the futuristic strategic problems that Pakistan is facing today. Mr. Zaid Hamid, as we were talking about the challenges that now General Rahil Sharif would be facing, but first, before we go on to those challenges, I have a question here. The complete ignorance of General Harun Aslam, who was the topmost general in the seniority list, why was he ignored? Here, the question is because he was the director military operations in October 12, 1999 coup, and he was leading that operation. That's why he has been ignored. So do you think that Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has made that decision and somewhere politics has been involved in this decision making as well?
You see, politics as well as phobias. Nawaz Sharif is phobic from SSG commandos, and General Harun Aslam was a special forces. President Musharraf was special forces. Keep that in mind as well. And when Musharraf was appointed from the special forces, he overthrew Nawaz Sharif. And this paranoia, Nawaz Sharif could not get rid of it. And frankly, Nawaz Sharif, a shallow man as he is, let me use this word, he's a very hollow man, indecisive, confused, disoriented. These are the very good attributes actually of the Prime Minister, unfortunately, but that's what he is. And so he is afraid, as I said, afraid of the armed forces itself. He's afraid of tough commanders. That's why he decided to ignore General Harun, he decided to ignore General Tariq, and he may, of course, he has an argument to ignore General Tariq because General Tariq was in any case 4th in seniority list. Once he ignored the top, General Harun, the 2nd and 3rd have been given the designations and the post, and from the seniority list, that makes lots of sense, all right. And they're both gentlemen officers as well. But the fact is, the paranoia of Nawaz Sharif is that he's afraid of tough fighting officers. And his gamble is that the officers that he has appointed, they are decent, gentlemen, academic, scholarly, administrative officers. And so perhaps, again I'm saying perhaps, his assumption is that they will not stand up to him even if he commits a treason like Memo.
So they want them to stay gentlemen. So
that's what his assumption is. It's a gamble for him every time because he's gambled twice and lost, and it's a 3rd gamble for him. So if history is an example, he is always betted on the wrong horse as far as appointing the army chief is concerned. So as far as General Rahil Sharif is concerned, if Nawaz Sharif thinks that General Rahil's loyalty will be to Nawaz Sharif, he's totally mistaken. Now, Raheel Sharif, as we know him, his loyalty will be to Islam and to Pakistan and to the Pakistan army, and then to the politicians. So if the politicians
what about Mr. Zaid Hamid? Raheel Sharif was appointed by Pervez Musharraf as military secretary back in 2002 to succeed Nadeem Taj during the last People's Party rule. So Raheel Sharif has close ties with General Pervez Musharraf as well.
You see, keep one thing in mind. Every senior officer in the Pakistan army that you see today has been promoted by Musharraf at one point or another. So you will find links with every officer because Musharraf was the commander-in-chief for 7 years, you see, for almost 7 to 8 years. And every
but then Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, when he bet on General Raheel Sharif, didn't he see this part of this connection between Raheel Sharif and Pervez Musharraf?
Every officer that he would trace, every officer that he would look into would have links with Musharraf somewhere, because as we said, for the last 8 or 9 years, the promotions before the Musharraf retired, all the promotions were done by Musharraf himself. So that's not the point. But the point is, the gamble that Nawaz Sharif has played with General Raheel is that his assumption is that Raheel will remain more loyal to him than to the country, to the nation, to the state, to the ideology, or to the armed forces. That, I think, Nawaz Sharif would be very sadly mistaken here. General Raheel is a thorough gentleman, a patriot. He would be loyal to the country, to the constitution, to Pakistan, to Islam. And as long as Nawaz Sharif remains within the limits and behave like a decent prime minister, yes, he will be respected by the armed forces as an institution. He if he behaves like Zardari, if he writes memos, if he brings the army down, if he brings the country down, then I don't think, he can trust.
But don't you think that now with more aggressive media and more independent judiciary, the frequency of the government has been changed? This tenure, these 5 years, the frequency of government might not be in the direction of writing memos. They might want to be cooperative with the army.
The Zardari period, the last 5 years have been, as we said, the worst in Pakistan's history. The politics, the democracy was worst, at its worst. It really destroyed the country economically, administratively. The media was at its worst, heavily penetrated, foreign funded, penetrated by the enemies, being used as an information warfare platform. Judiciary completely collapsed, and the role of judiciary was actually hostile to the armed forces and against the national security. So these are, as we said, those very dangerous times. But now when the new army chief has come, the silver lining is that the new chief justice is also coming almost at the same time. After about 2 weeks, the new chief justice will also come.
December 12th.
And this chief justice the new chief justice has the reputation of being, again, a thorough gentleman and a decent person who would not be as hostile to the army as the previous chief justice was seen to be. So for General Raheel, one positive development would be that the pressure that the army was getting from the judiciary is expected to be reduced, because judiciary now is almost at a cutthroat competition. It's actually attacking the army, supporting and siding the terrorists. An army has to defend itself more in judiciary than against the terrorists, is the unfortunate part. So with General Raheel coming in place, he will probably be, we expect him to face a more lenient, more mild, more docile, more cooperative judiciary, which is going to be a great help for him.
Great help. So now here the question comes that won't General Raheel Sharif be expected to prominent himself and bring out something that reflects his personality and not to follow the same pattern as General Kayani? Now the pattern of General Kayani was to support democracy and to have a civil-military relationship in a more cordial way. So you think General Raheel will follow the same footsteps, or will bring out his own personality?
The policies of General Kayani, they definitely supported the democracy, the continuation of democracy, but they definitely damaged the institution of the army. Because if General Kayani did not impose martial law or remove the government, he also did not resist the attacks on the army from the media, from the government, and from the judiciary. That should have been done. We have been saying that on media for years, that we do not advocate martial laws, but army must respond to false allegations. Army must respond to hostile information war. Army must respond to indecent judicial behavior. Army must respond to to put the political government in place, to force the parliament, to force the government to make relevant laws which support the army in the war on terror. So what had happened was that army was fighting while all the flanks were exposed. The judicial flank, the media flank, the legal flank, the information warfare flanks were exposed. The army was taking hits from the other sides while taking casualties in the battlefield. This is what General Kiani did. And I personally feel that General Rahil will definitely have to cover those flanks as well, which were exposed during the General Kiani's tenure. And this would add more pressure on General Rahil. He will have to get all his commanders together, make a new strategy, because the war that we are fighting right now, there is no doubt about it, that despite winning the battles, Pakistan is losing the war. And in this case, in this scenario, a new war strategy is required. The government will have to be forced to develop an Afghan policy, to develop an anti-terror policy. The parliament will have to be forced to bring about anti-terror laws. Judiciary will have to be forced to start punishing the terrorists, reduce the pressure on the armed forces, increase the pressure on the terrorists. The media will have to be brought in line. The hostile media will have to be isolated, eliminated actually, put on trial. So these things must be done. Otherwise, the next 3 years of General Rahil's tenure are going to be hell for Pakistan.
So if we look at the coming 6 months that we have right here in front of us, in these 6 months we know that the evacuation of NATO forces would be happening in Afghanistan, and in the next 6 months elections, general elections would be happening in India, and we have someone like Narendra Modi might be the next Prime Minister of India. So seeing all this, and then the general elections in Afghanistan will also be taking place in the next 6 months. So next 6 months are very defining. You think that after 6 months the military and civil relationship would be same at the same frequency level, or will we see some turbulence between the two?
You see, even right now, if you look at the democracy in Pakistan, do you see any government in any province or in the federal government? No, there is no government, and neither in the provinces, neither in the federal government. The economy is collapsing. The provincial governments are fighting with the federal government. The Imran Khan government in frontier is actually blocking the NATO supplies, creating a diplomatic crisis for the federal government. The government, the government of Balochistan is completely non-existent, not able to control the insurgency. The People's Party government in Sindh is actually waging a war on terror on the streets of Karachi itself. Almost 50 to 60 people are killed in ethnic urban violence every week. So the point is, this time, as the scenario is, the army will not have to bring this government down. Nawaz Sharif is good enough, doing a fantastic job at it already. Nawaz Sharif is famous for committing suicides, self-inflicted damages. That's what he's famous for doing. That's exactly what he's doing now. And the point is, if the state collapses, if the government collapses, if a provincial government collapses, if the anarchy spreads, if the urban insurgency and terrorism and sectarian war and riots start taking place on the street, and the government is not able to control it, as we saw recently in sectarian violence that erupted in Pakistan, and now when the insurgent terrorist groups, Fazlullah has become the new commander, and they have promised more attacks on Pakistan. If this kind of insurgency explodes into Pakistan in the next coming weeks, and the government is not able to control them, then that would increase the pressure on the army and the new army chief exponentially. And as we are saying this very openly, we have been saying this before as well, that Pakistan is losing this urban fourth generation war. So how to recover it? We may be winning militarily in certain axes, but the urban war we are losing, the economic war we are losing, the information judicial media war we are losing, and Pakistan is being surrounded in AFPAC, in drones, cold start, water war, Kashmir, and withdrawal of the American forces, which has divided the nation completely in Pakistan itself. So these crises are humongous, monumental for any army chief, for a man of any stature. So for General Rahil to handle all this alone, without the support of the judiciary, government or the media, would be a next to impossible task. So if he wants to win this war, he will have to put the government in line. He'll have to put the judiciary and media in line.
You think he's capable of doing that, General Rahil Sharif?
See, Rahil Sharif is not an individual. He represents an institution. The institution of army is a solid, united, disciplined organization. And Rahil Sharif, as we said, is a patriotic officer, has an honorable tradition in his family. He is loyal to Pakistan. He is fanatically in love with Pakistan Army and Pakistan as a state and its ideology. So we expect all the good from him, and we expect him to bring to keep the army together, to keep the army united. The patriots are with him. The nation have great expectations from him that he would deliver where General Kiani did not. While lots of people respect Kiani for fighting a very difficult war on ground, at the same time people have complaints from General Kiani for staying too silent against the corruption of the government and judiciary and the media. Then this is where people would expect General Rahil to deliver as well, because those flanks are exposed, those axes, we are losing the war. And if this continues as it is, even General Rahil's job would become almost impossible.
We will discuss this after a short break. Mr. Zaid Hamid, we would also like to know that if we analyze the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan situation, and then we also analyze the current scenario in the past 2 months of how US CIA is proceeding and in killing of the Haqqani network, which is supposed to be the friendly ones towards Pakistan, how is that affecting Pak Army and Pak-Afghan Taliban relations? Stay with us. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back, viewers. Since after the announcement of the new Army Chief of Pakistan, General Rahil Sharif, now the next question is that will General Rahil Sharif do more to disengage the security establishment from shadowy games and nudge the army to embrace zero-tolerance policy against militancy? What would be the challenges for new Army Chief? All these questions that we would like to know how new General Rahil Sharif, the Chief of Army Staff, will be handling this. Mr. Zaid Hamid, there is another important nomination that we saw, another post nomination, which was General Zaid Mahmood, who has been appointed as the chairman of JCSC. How do you see that nomination, and how effective is that? Is it just a ceremonial post that he's going to be taking care of?
Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee there's a tendency to call it a ceremonial post, but it's definitely not, because it's a senior position, higher than the Army Chief, theoretically, higher than the Air Force Chief, higher than the Naval Chief, and in fact it's a coordinating post between the three services.
So it's not just about cutting ribbons and cakes?
No, it's definitely not, because they're very lethal kind of ribbons they cut, and they're responsible for Pakistan's nuclear and missile programs as well. They're responsible for developing Pakistan's military doctrines. They're responsible for cooperation between Pakistan and various armed forces of the country. And they are responsible for developing joint military strategies between various armed forces of Pakistan, various armed services of Pakistan. So it's an important post, but it is purely a military or military related post. Nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with operational matters of the three services, Army, Navy and Air Force. So as a result, it is always a post which remains in the sideline, in shadows. They design doctrines, they write policies, they develop Pakistan nuclear program, the concept of what kind of missiles Pakistan needs, the mini nukes, the development of nuclear missile program, purchasing of Pakistan's defense equipment from all over the world, whatever we require. These kind of works, academic work, research work, doctrine development, these kind of things are done by the Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee. It's a very important office, but it has absolutely no interaction.
The explanation of this post that you have just given suits more to the resume of General Rahil Sharif. But General Zaid Mahmood has been appointed as the chairman of JCSC, and General Rahil Sharif has been appointed as the Chief of Army Staff. Do you think they should have been interchanged?
You see, the point is that there are lots of debate and discussion within the armed forces, within the academics, within the media about who should have gone there. But the fact of the matter is that both Rahil and Rashid are known to be academic officers, good for writing research papers, report, assessment, evaluations, analysis, and both of them could have done this job. If Rahil was posted as Chairman Joint Chief, he could have done an equally good job. Now Rashid has been posted, he would do an equally good job.
How much war experience do they both carry in their resume?
In the present context, little, to be honest. Because
General Harun Aslam and General Tariq had the most war-favoring terms on their resumes.
You see, General Harun and General Tariq were the ones who have blood on their clothes fighting the terrorists. They actually went on the front line and fought.
General Harun Aslam led the Swat operation.
Led the Swat operation. he led the biggest heli-borne operation in Pakistan's history, the operation which cleansed the Swat Valley of the terrorists. General Tariq was the one who actually secured the valley on ground, led the formidable, a very weak frontier corps was converted into a formidable fighting force by General Tariq, himself led the attacks into the terrorist areas. So both these officers within the armed forces have led the army into operations. So it was expected, within the army it was an expectation that at least one of them would be given a post
from the
in the GHQ. But the decision was from the Prime Minister, and now a very gentleman, decent, academic, patriotic officer has come there. But as we said, army is not an individual, it's an institution. General Tariq is still in the army. There are some very good corps commanders who have seen war, especially the corps commander of Peshawar, who's leading the operations right now. He is there in the army as well. And they're all brothers in arms. They're all friends, they're all brothers, they're all almost colleagues now, almost the same. General Kiani is far more senior because he's been there for 6 years. But now the leadership of the army which is there, they're almost course-mates, 1 or 2 course-mates above and lower or above.
But how do you see this, that the Chief of Army Staff, General Rahil Sharif, and then General Rashid Mahmood, the chairman of JCSC, they both have the background from Lahore, from Punjab. So does that make any difference that most of the core positions are being held by people's background with Punjab or Lahore?
You see, again, this is the talk that is going on in the social media. People are discussing this in the media as well. Army as an institution is far above these biases and prejudices. But the point is that Nawaz Sharif is not. Nawaz Sharif is very heavily biased towards Kashmiri Punjabi nexus. I mean, this is the unfortunate part that he's a prime minister, but he thinks more as a Punjabi Kashmiri about himself. It's an unfortunate part, but it's a fact. That's how he does it. And he was comfortable. All the cabinet that he's made, almost the national cabinet is about 22 or 24 ministers, almost 19 or 20 of them are from Punjab and mostly from Lahore. So this is the unfortunate part, because all the PMLN, the party that he belongs to, if you look at the all top leadership, all the leadership are actually relatives of Nawaz Sharif. It's all within the family. So,
and now we have another Sharif on board.
Well, so army is not involved into this, that the appointment could have been Pashtun, General Tariq, or could have been General Harun, or could have been from any other place also. But the point is, Nawaz Sharif does have a Punjabi Kashmiri preferences. And this is the unfortunate part. You see this in the cabinet also, you see this in the in all the choices and decisions and appointments that you make in civil departments also. And this is the unfortunate part. As we said, the Prime Minister has not risen above ethnic or linguistic lines. His mentality is still very shallow, unfortunately.
Sure. Now, if we look at the JCSC, as we were talking about General Rashid Mahmood, so if you look at his post and his responsibilities assigned to him, you think the team together of General Rahil Sharif and General Rashid Mahmood would bring something new, a new image to the Pak Army, that they have been seeing the same image through General Kiani for the past 6 years?
See,
what new could these two offer?
See, both of these officers are very fine officers. They've been at very, very important positions in the army. They have seen, for the last 6 and 7 years, they have worked in the army, they have seen the army that is fighting all around them, they have seen the collapse of the economy, the state and the nation, the role of the judiciary and the media, and they know where the army, they have their hands on the pulse of the army, they know what the officers want, what the army wants, what the country needs, and all the positive and the negative sides of the General Kiani's rule is also in front of them. So the nation expects this. We expect this as well, that there is going to be a policy re-evaluation. All the loopholes are going to be plugged, all the weaknesses.
When you say policy re-evaluation, what kind of re-evaluation could be done in the policy? Should they not be favoring the peace talks with Taliban first? Should they be changing it to the military operation now?
The most important policy evaluation that is required is that Pakistan must decide a termination strategy of the war which we are fighting for the last 12 years. Still, there is no termination strategy. We don't know how this war is going to end. The termination strategy right now as such is dependent on the Americans. If the Americans leave Afghanistan, would they leave or would they not leave? What is the Pakistan's Afghan policy? How do we plan to end this war? Are we going to engage the Afghan Taliban? What kind of future Afghan policy we want? The Afghan government we want? Nothing is decided. And this is the unfortunate part, because this is where the military leadership and the government should have sat together and decided a national policy on Afghanistan. There's no national policy in Afghanistan. There's no national security strategy. There's no national Kashmir strategy. There's no national India strategy. There's no national urban war strategy. So there is nothing. And these policies need to be developed, which were not developed in the last 6 years of General Kiani's rule because of a very incompetent Zardari government, which was actually treacherous. But now when the Nawaz Sharif has come, the new army chief has come, the new chief justice is coming, new joint chairman, joint chief of staff committee has been appointed. This is the
entire structure is new, from government
and this is the moment to evaluate what have we achieved in the last 13 years and where should we go now. Because now the American presence in Afghanistan, the drones, the TTP has polarized the nation, divided the nation so violently that you cannot continue with this state of confusion within the nation itself. The governments are pitching against each other, people are pitching against the government, media is against the army, judiciary is against the army. There's a friction between the government and the armed forces. This cannot continue. This must stop. And for that, a national consensus, a national policy on what do we want in Afghanistan, how do we terminate this war, all these things would immediately come on Chairman, Joint Chief of Staff Committee and the new Army Chief. They'll have to sit together with their comrades in arms. They sit together with Army, Navy and Air Force chiefs. Corps commanders have to sit and recommend to the government that this is how we can terminate the war. Whether we should keep the US in Afghanistan, we should throw them out, where should we block the NATO supplies, whatever.
So how will the new Army Chief proceed in the direction, since in the past 2 months there were 2 attacks on the Haqqani network group, which were considered to be the friends to Pakistan. So do you think that the relations, these 2 attacks from US on Haqqani network, might have affected the relations between Afghan Taliban and Pak Army or Pakistan?
See, the relation, it has not affected the relations because Afghan Taliban are very smart people. They are Afghan Pashtuns. They know Pakistan is not their enemy. They know Pakistan Army and Pakistani nation are their neighbors, and Pakistan have supported them in the war against the Soviets. So the level of respect still remains, despite the fact that the Pakistan governments have been extremely weak in the last 12-13 years. Afghan Taliban may have disagreements, may have hostility against the Pakistani government, but never against the Pakistani armed forces and the Pakistani people. And everybody understands that it's the Americans who are trying to pitch Pakistan against the Afghan Taliban, and it has not happened in the last 13 years. Despite the Americans have always been wanting Pakistan to go against Haqqani network, Jalaluddin Haqqani and Hikmat Yar and Mullah Umar, and Pakistan Army has not been waging wars against them. On the other hand, Americans have been sending in TTP and BLA insurgents who are waging campaign of terror in Pakistan, and Pakistan Army is trying to fight them off.
You think the new Army Chief will have enough grip on Prime Minister to put pressure on US to hand over Fazlullah from Afghanistan?
You see, as we said, new Army Chief would represent the institution, not his individual self. So if the institution gets together and decides that political government must deliver, then Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif will have to deliver. No matter how docile, how gentleman, how decent, how Sharif general he brings, the fact of the matter is, when it comes to national interest, Army will stand united. And they would put pressure on the political government, on the media and on the judiciary to deliver where they are not delivering, while the Army is giving casualties every day.
What would be the strategy of General Raheel Sharif, since we have seen 3 months after the APC that everybody was waiting for the peace talks with Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and the other Talibans, and then it ended up nowhere. With this new Army Chief, how will he pick up this thread? Will he still wait for the peace talks to get done, or will he insist to let's get over with the peace talk dream and move on to the military operation?
As far as peace talks are concerned, it is very clear now that it is not Pakistan Army which scuttled them. It was the CIA. It was the CIA drone which killed the peace talks in Pakistan. So, and the Fazlullah, the new person who was appointed as the commander of the TTP, had made it very clear that there are not going to be any peace talks and they are going to wage more attacks against Pakistan. So Pakistan Army has no choice. Raheel or any other general would have done the same. They would have fought the TTP, and they're going to do that. The fact of the matter is, but fighting the TTP is only a reactive war. It is not proactive war. The proactive war is that you destroy them in Afghanistan. You eject the Americans from Afghanistan. Because once the foreign forces leave Afghanistan, all the insurgencies coming into Pakistan also stop. And this is called the proactive diplomacy, going aggressive, going into Afghanistan to finding the solution to the Afghan crisis. This is something that General Rahil will have to do during his tenure. Because as the situation is, if the Americans stay in Afghanistan and Pakistan continue to fight the reactive war which we are fighting for the last 13 years, we will start to lose, which we are losing now. And this is untenable. The situation cannot be sustained for long now. Pakistan is taking too much casualties because of the insurgencies coming in from Afghanistan.
10 seconds, Mr. Zaid Hamid. What would be the one-liner advice that you would like to give to the Chief of Army Staff, General Rahil Sharif? What should be his very first priority?
You see, General Rahil Sharif, to him I would say is that you today stand on a very high moral pedestal, very high moral ground. He is highly respected in the country today because of his brother, because of his uncle, because of the pedigree that he comes from, because of the lineage that he has. He is highly respected in the nation today. And it is up to him now to deliver. And we as a nation, we the patriots, offer him full support. Because the nation is with him, nation have great expectations from the new chief. All the disappointments, all the complaints that nation had with the previous chief should now be addressed by the new army chief. Nation stands with him.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zaid Hamid. Viewers, as you saw that we analyzed the long-term puzzle finally getting solved, and we all see the pieces getting put together. And as you can see that General Harun Aslam got politics, General Rashid Mahmood got rules, and General Rahil Sharif inherited the world's 6th largest army of Pakistan, and Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif happens to be the kingmaker. Let's see the two Sharif duo. Will these two be able to provide security and the economical revolution to Pakistan or not? That's it for tonight. See you all next Sunday. Until then, take care of yourself and your Pakistan. Allah Hafiz and good night.